All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for attending this uh, April edition of our Micromobility Committee meeting. Um, we're going to talk about the Baltimore City dockless vehicle program. Our two operators, Spin and Lime, will be making presentations, and I'm going to talk about what we've been doing first 3 months of 2025, and talk about our rider survey being open, talk about the equity aspect of our system getting some media and academic attention, talk about some proposed changes to the rules and regulations. We have a fleet increase announcement for Lime, and then you'll hear from our operators and we'll take questions and look ahead. Next slide. Happen, please happen. There we go. All right. So that's the agenda that I just listed. Again, to review our program goals, we're looking to set clear expectations of the operators, grow and standardize our access program, make sure the entire fleet of vehicles are safe and operable, provide transportation alternatives to the entire city of Baltimore, check for compliance, fleet condition, distribution of the vehicles, and issue response times, make sure the bikes and scooters are viable solutions where there's gaps in the transportation network, and work with stakeholders to address issues or concerns with the program. So from January 1st through March 31st, there were 388,898 trips taken on micromobility, scooters and e-bikes in Baltimore City. Over 436,000 miles traveled. The average distance of the trip was 1.12 miles. The average duration was about 10 minutes, 9.5 minutes there. And we saved a bunch of CO2 from going into the atmosphere, which is always nice. Our rider survey is now open. You can go directly to that jot form link if you like, or if you are riding our scooters or e-bikes, the survey should pop up within the app. Please take those. We look at that data and use it to inform how we make decisions about the program moving forward. Of particular interest is how we might improve the program. What are the things holding riders back from using dockless vehicles more frequently? Things like that. So please spread the word. The more respondents we get, the better our data is to make those decisions from. And that survey is going to be open through April, and we've got both Spin and Lime. Thank you, Brett. Brett popped the link to the survey into the chat. Both Spin and Lime are working to get these surveys out to their riders. Our equity program is getting some media and academic attention. Here is an article that came out in February by Dan Rodricks about how, as we've discussed in previous meetings, the distribution of the routes, the most frequently traveled routes in the system from 2019 to 2024 looks very different. I will show the next slide, makes it apparent. You can see on the left, that's the 2019 route heat map. And you very clearly see the white L spelled out there. And if you look at the map on the right, as the result of hard work by my predecessors and by our operators, Spin over the course of 5 years, and Lime for some of that time as well, working to get more people interested in riding the dockless vehicles. And you can see the quotes there by Jed and John, just pointing out that the efforts to try to make the system more equitable are in fact paying off. And we're seeing the kind of growth balance across the system that we'd like to see out there. Our very own Meg Young contributed to this journal article done by the Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg School of Public Health that took a close look at how the equity zones work, what the impact of them are on the system, and that is definitely a big part of what has created a more balanced across the city network of trips on the dockless vehicles. And some of the things that we are hearing from that study's survey is that, making the rentals less expensive, adding bike lanes, allowing riders to carry more things, and increasing the number of e-scooters are important ways that we can increase the usage of the dockless program. So encourage everyone to check out the article and that journal article as well. So in the past 7 months, I've been working with our operators on figuring out some ways we can change the program to make it work better, make it work safer. And these are some of the proposed changes to the rules and regulations that we'll be considering putting into place for the next permit year at the beginning of July. So the first one is to remove the required feature of a locking device for just the bicycles. Currently, the scooters are not required to have a lock-to device on them. And so this is just something that we're going to drop as a requirement for the purposes of fairness and simplicity. Remove the required feature that only applies to e-bikes. Currently, the vast majority of the scooters and e-bikes in the system are just self-locked, whether they have a lock-to mechanism or not. So this is something that'll just simplify the program and allow operators to introduce e-bikes that do not have a lock-to on them, a lock-to locking mechanism on them, I suppose. The second proposed change is to just sort of clarify exactly how many vehicles are supposed to be at the 13 equity zones. There's older language that allows for there to only be 3 vehicles, but I believe at that time we allowed operators to have only one type of vehicle. But now that we require there to be 2 types of vehicles, effectively every operator needs to have 4 vehicles at every equity zone location between the hours of 5 and 9 a.m. So we're just going to make that clear by saying it's 4 and remove some of this extraneous language moving forward. And the point of this is just to make it simpler. Yep. The third proposed change is something that happened this past winter. I was concerned that there would be staff members for the operators out there in hazardous conditions trying to ensure that there were vehicles at each of the equity zones specifically, because that compliance is looked at between the hours of 5 a.m. and 9 a.m. And those are some of the hours before the sun comes out where icy conditions can be at their worst. We thought it made sense to just say, all right, if Baltimore City Public Schools are delayed, closed, or early closed on those days, the operators are not going to be on the hook for having those 4 vehicles at the 13 equity zone sites, with the idea being that we're not requiring the staff in the vans to be out there when the conditions are unsafe to be operating. And using BCPS as sort of like a third objective party making the call, the operators have a really publicly accessible way to know when they're not on the hook for those requirements. The fourth proposed rules and regulations change is to require operators to be able to remotely shut down their fleets within 2 hours written notice given by the department. I've checked with both operators. Apparently this is something that is quite feasible, but we just didn't have any language in there. We do have language for something more onerous, which is to require them to remove their entire fleet from the streets, but we didn't have language about simply remote shutting down the vehicles. And this is just to cover unforeseen circumstances where we would want there to be no use of vehicles. Say there's like a horrendous severe ice storm that makes it literally unsafe to operate any of the vehicles. We might, in those circumstances, ask the operators to go ahead and make all the vehicles unavailable. Or if there was just a certain part of town where there's something going on weather-wise where we don't think it's safe for the vehicles to operate in that part of town, like a flood or something like that, well, ideally, we'd probably want those vehicles physically removed. We might want to say, just don't let them be rentable. And that's what this would achieve. And the last proposed rules and regulation change at this time is just to make it clear that the second vehicle type we're talking about is e-bikes. It has effectively been e-bikes up to this point. This is just kind of to make that crystal clear that when we're talking about a second vehicle type, we're talking about an e-bike. This is to ensure that all operators moving forward are aware that the city has an interest in making sure e-bikes are available on the streets. E-bikes are generally safer than scooters for longer distance or travel on questionable pavement surfaces, like the cobblestones that are all over Fells Point. So this would just simplify and specify that the second vehicle type we're looking for is e-bikes. And you can find our rules and regulations at that link right there, or if you just Google search Baltimore City dockless vehicle rules and regulations, you can pull it up that way. And as a reminder, 311 can be used to report misparked or poorly parked or parked on private property, or a scooter or an e-bike that is parked, right in front of your gate of your fence or something like that is blocking your access to the street. You can call 311 and report it that way. The city has visibility into those reports, and both operators are actively monitoring service requests that come in via the 311 system to respond and get those vehicles cleared. The current fleet sizes for both of our operators are as follows: 2,800 e-scooters for Spin, 150 e-bikes, 1,500 total scooters for Lime, and 500 e-bikes. But we have an announcement that more scooters and e-bikes are coming to the market. Lime has requested and been granted a fleet cap increase of 250 additional scooters and 100 additional e-bikes by hitting their compliance goals, keeping their fleet in good condition, and showing a very high utilization rate that we use to determine whether an operator should be allowed to put more vehicles in the market. So congratulations to Lime. Look forward to bringing more dockless vehicles to the market this way. So look out for more of those out there. And now we will have our operator presentations. Jeremy, are you among us?
I am.
All right. This is Jeremy Lynch. He's the Senior Government Partnerships Manager for Spin. He's going to be talking about what Spin's been up to. Jeremy, just say next slide for me. I can advance them for you. And after that, I believe we'll be hearing from Harsh, who's a general manager at Lime, who's going to talk about what Lime has been up to. So Harsh, you're just going to go ahead and jump in after Jeremy is done. Jeremy, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thanks, Tyler. Next slide. And next slide. There we go. So the contents and context, basically, we want to run through some of the ridership. One of the important things was, ensuring the growth of the ridership as we progress every year with Baltimore, with the residents and visitors. One of our main focuses is on equity and ensuring that growth continues year over year. We've had a fabulous year and can't wait to share some of those numbers. And as always, community engagement is one of the highlights. One of the things we do all the time, and with each season brings new opportunities and different engagement opportunities in the fall, the winter, and the spring. And so we'll basically going over what we know over through this fall. And next slide. So year over year, the ridership has grown about 8%. One of the things we can address that or credit that to is the new vehicles, the C1s. The increase in those vehicles and the fleet has obviously driven a lot of ridership. We've increased our bike deployments to get up to that 150 number. One of the things we've done and figured out in that regard were some of the operational efficiencies. Working with the team at Baltimore to help us figure out, as far as the inspections go, what needed to be fixed, what were some of the major concerns, and then working with our team to make sure that those fixes were paramount in our QCs, our quality control inspections, when all the vehicles came back into the warehouse to make sure that they were repaired and back in shape and ready to ride safely out in the city. Also leads to the increase in ridership, and also the engagement through a lot of community events. The NFL games do a great ride for us. Great rides for us on those weekends, especially Saturday. Being a Red Sox fan, I know that happens a lot when the games are at Camden Yards. Lots of folks come into town the day before, make a weekend out of it. Same thing happens with NFL games, and we've taken advantage of that. So we've always seen great ridership. So that's one of the things, one of the big promotions that we do during the fall. Next slide. So the equity investment, the year-over-year ridership, it's been tremendous. The growth has been up to 363% year over year. One of the things that's been has worked out very well for us is that those discounts automatically are applied to the trips that begin in the equity zones that the city has designated. It makes it far easier for riders to just pick up a scooter in that zone and get the discount without having to apply and go through that process right out of the gate. One of the things we do is we do message them after those rides to make sure that they are aware of where to join and to get that access in every other part of the city. But it has been tremendous success for us. And that's one of the things that it's the hardest part of, and I'm sure Lon would attest to, is getting those folks to be able to sign up and getting that messaging out. And one of the things is being able to automatically message them after their rides is important. And it's certainly driven more ridership. And as far as the participation goes, another 290% increase year over year on the number of members that have joined. And that we can attest to that, the ability of our product team to make that happen. So we're very proud of how our access program has been successful in the course of the last year in Baltimore. Next slide. And just some of the community events, even as down as some of the things like the Taco Fest or the Fun Run. Craft Beer Fest is always a big one. That was always big in DC as well. Drew several thousand people. But again, the Ravens games with the Commanders, the Broncos and the Eagles, Steelers, all big events for us. And we also generally at least 2 or 3 times a quarter have safety campaign events where we give out helmets, teach people how to ride if they're first time riders, and basically send up a tent, as you see here, with Grant and his team going out and making sure that people that want to ride can learn how to ride properly, safely in the street. And it's one of those things that we engage with the community is making sure we do quite a few of these events every quarter in the city of Baltimore. Next slide. I think that's it. Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you, Jeremy. Next up is Harsh.
Cool. First slide is going to be an intro, so we can go ahead and skip that. So I wanted to talk about our ridership this year. We can't really compare to last year's numbers because we weren't around till July. However, the response in Baltimore City has been pretty tremendous. The chart here shows trips weekly, starting from the end of last year. And obviously, it was a very interesting winter. It's my first winter here in the Mid-Atlantic region. I was told, there's not a lot of snow. It's very pleasant temperature-wise. However, we did not experience that. Despite that poor weather, we had steady, stable ridership through middle of February. As temperatures started clearing up, we've seen that shoot up very significantly. For a little bit of context, I know Cherry Blossom is very massive in Washington, D.C. However, we did see an almost similar increase in trips in Baltimore the last 2 weekends. For context, on Saturdays and Sundays, we measure something in operations called TVD, which is trips per vehicles per day. On the last couple weeks that we've seen, the trip averages have been over 2.5, and on the weekends, they've been over 3. So what that really means is that our vehicles are getting minimum 3 trips per day. Each vehicle, on average, is getting that many on those weekends. So we're really happy about that ridership and the response that we've seen in the city here. Next slide. With this, right, taking the same data, breaking it down, obviously we have way more scooters in Baltimore City than we do bikes. And we are trying to remedy that by adding more bikes as well. One thing that we have changed that you might notice is almost all of our bikes now should have a throttle feature, which does make it much easier, much more accessible to take longer rides. And especially if you haven't tried a bike because of how cumbersome and heavy they might be, this helps with the ease of rides. And we've seen an uptick year over year when it comes to bike ridership across all regions that Lime operates in. Very excited to see what that does for us in Baltimore this year. But this is just to give us kind of a breakdown between the two modes of transportation. One thing we are looking to do as a company is bring in alternatives to the bikes that we currently have. We're doing a pilot of what we'd like to call a Lime bike or a Sparrow. It's essentially a much more lower to the ground vehicle, much more easy to ride, and we've had a lot of good feedback coming from it. And we're really excited to announce that. One thing that we didn't really include in this is we do have a lot of ridership coming from equity zones, and part of the reason that we're really excited to celebrate this fleet increase is making sure that we've been able to get rides to the citizens that need it, and they have driven a good amount of ridership for us, which has helped us show that high TBD. Next slide. And then keeping it short and sweet here, we do have a couple events coming up. The most recent, or I guess the next one that's coming up, is on April 11th. We have the Rotterdam Bike Tour that's in partnership with Bike More. So we're going to have some vehicles out there. If anyone's interested, come check it out. Those rides will be available. And then on the 26th, we have Celebrate Trails Day. And on the second week of May, we have Bike to Work Week, which we'll be doing a couple promotions. So be on the lookout for those. The last thing I want to mention is at Camden Yards, we do like to make sure that we have a team staff there. And there could be pop-ups from time to time. But if anybody has ventured down that way, you'll see Lime bikes, you'll see staff members that are organizing these vehicles and making sure that they're accessible to everyone. Next slide. And then that's all we have for Lime in Baltimore. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Harsh. All right. Our next Micromobility quarterly meeting will be taking place in July 9th, in exactly 3 months from now. And at this point, I'm happy to open it up to any questions anyone might have. Oh, we got Jed with a raised hand. I just noticed that. I will open up my participants pad. Jed, go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Tyler. A question for you and then one for Lime. For you, I was just curious, with the rule changes, was there any consideration of making a more uniform equity requirement, so users using the various apps would have a consistent experience? And then for Lime, I just had some quick feedback on the throttles. I've heard a lot of positive feedback about the throttles, but I've also heard from some folks that it kicks on like immediately, and I don't know if there's a path to like a 1 second delay when you push the throttle, or like a phase, like a ramp up in terms of the amount of power people are getting, because I do know, at least on like the last group ride I went on, we had someone like run into another bicyclist with it because they weren't prepared for how fast the throttle would go. So just some feedback there.
Thanks, Jed. So to your question, Brett and I did have a proposed rule change regarding access programs. What the access offerings for both operators is going to be has been rather fluid, and I just didn't want to issue that without first calling a meeting with both operators to really try to hash out where we could try to meet in the middle or on either side of the access program and have a standard across all operators. So it's an ongoing effort there, and there might be a rules and regulation change regarding it coming up. But first, I wanted to literally just like sit down with both stakeholders and try to figure out where we could have a uniform standard. And Harsh, you want to speak to the throttle question?
Yeah, he put an answer in the chat, so that's
Okay.
good to hear. And Tyler, that's awesome. Thank you, and totally makes sense. Obviously, we want the operators to agree and everything. So I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem. Um, any other hands up or any other questions?
This is Meg. I guess a request for the next meeting. I'd love to hear an update on how corrals and bike parking rollout is going to accommodate parking for all of the vehicles. But not like an immediate question. Could be handled in the next micromobility meeting.
Sure, yeah. I am currently reviewing all current corrals for refreshing and dropping unused ones, and also looking to add additional ones as well. So I will definitely have some concrete things to announce by the next meeting on that.
So thank you.
Mhm. Anyone else? No need to raise your hand. Just, oh wait, do I see Benjamin, you have a question?
Yes, mine was related to Meg's about the corrals. I was wondering if we were taking a look at areas where there is loss of the devices, particularly like in the harbor or anything like that, to define no ride zones and or corrals where things could be uh, parked in specific areas. I was just wondering if we were looking at, what areas of the city do we experience frequent loss and those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's a great question. It is hard to have good data on the vehicles that end up in the water, except to note where the magnet fisher folk are pulling them out of. So we do currently have a slow zone along the entire waterfront promenade in downtown Baltimore, but I mean, yeah, I see the reasoning behind it, right? Like, uh, if someone is doing something you don't want them to do, how are we showing them what you want them to do? Can be a more effective tool than
Yeah,
just
and I
trying
was
to.
actually thinking about drilling down into the data a little more. So, for example, with the magnet fishermen, when uh, a bike or a scooter does get pulled out of the harbor, but just if it gets pulled out of a ditch, are those uh, numbers from those devices recorded anywhere? And then can we look back in the data and see when and where that device was last seen online? Because if there are certain hotspots where, the devices are last seen online, then we could identify that as a problem area that we could then tackle perhaps with a corral or with a slow zone or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the two spots I'm most aware of where vehicles get fished out are near the Broadway Pier in the Fells Point area, and we do have several corrals within like a block or two of that location. Same for where I'm aware of they're getting pulled out on the sort of the Light Street side of the Inner Harbor, sort of the western part of the Inner Harbor there. We have a corral about a block away, just outside the slow down zone. But yeah, I'll continue looking for opportunities to make the proper way of parking them apparent to folks. I'm not sure that's what's going on in the mind of someone that decides to throw a vehicle in the water is like, oh, I'm not sure where to park this. I'm going to throw it in the worst possible location. But I do take your point that showing the preferred area is a good method to use.
Yeah, and I was also thinking about, areas where we just don't want people to go at all, given that, vehicles do get disposed of. And I'm not just thinking of the harbor, I'm also thinking of, you know, um, industrial parks and other areas where the devices end up abandoned. If we can identify those areas which are a problem area, then we can do things to deter those devices from ending up in that area also. I know that where the device ends up and where the device was initially went offline are sometimes two different places. And so I was just asking if there's any data on that.
Not currently at hand, but you've definitely given us and the operators something to talk about in terms of trying to notice patterns in terms of where and when certain vehicles are going offline. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions or comments or concerns?
Tyler, I had one more. I was just going through the survey. For next time, I think how Baltimore City DOT can improve the program. There is, at least I'm not seeing an option to build more separated bike infrastructure or bike lanes. Just questions referring to the existing infrastructure. And I think based on results from some of the prior surveys, the number one result was build more. So I think we should have that option in there.
Yeah, that should be in there. Let me take a look at that, Chad. Thank you. To be clear, it is understood that that is something that riders are looking for across previous surveys as well. Anyone else? All right, gonna call it. Thank you all for joining us, and we will continue this discussion in July. Appreciate everyone attending. Have a great one.